Trois sources viennent de déclarer.
Three sources have just told Reuters that the Iranians have reportedly asked the Houthi movement in Yemen to stand ready to block the Red Sea oil route if the United States were to strike Iranian electrical infrastructure. What is your reaction to this new threat to the global energy supply?
It is that the escalation must stop, that we return to the framework of the ceasefire signed on June 17th in Versailles. There are now 60 days that have been opened. We're not there. 60 days of negotiations in which the parties must be able to make progress, both on the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, which we have not reached, and on the more general, more global parameters of the negotiations on the Iranian nuclear program, on its ballistic program, and on its proxy program.
Le président de la République, aux côtés du chancelier.
On Ukraine, the President of the Republic, alongside Chancellor Merz, but also Prime Minister Starmer and President Zelensky, wish to gather this coalition on the eve of the July 14th parade to mark a very perceptible dynamic. Now is the time for unity among allies. Now is the time for convergence. This reinforced unity, as we saw with the Evian moment, was welcomed by the President of the Republic during the G7 summit. A robust unity that was then once again embodied by the unanimous support during the last European Council and confirmed in Ankara during the last NATO summit. The allies share the same diagnosis. The first is that time is not on Russia's side, and the second is that it is crucial to force an end to the fighting and relaunch negotiations. And we are therefore in this dynamic, determined to continue our support for Ukraine for as long as it takes, while deepening our work on security guarantees, which will serve as pillars for a just and lasting peace. This is precisely the message that the President of the Republic and the Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs are conveying to their counterpart. The work carried out within the Coalition of the Willing for over 2 years is operational and concrete. In this regard, this week we announced the upcoming holding, and this is an important announcement of exercises in the countries neighboring Ukraine in order to validate our deployment plans for the Coalition of the Willing. A clear desire to demonstrate that we are ready, credible on land, at sea, and in the air. This new coalition outlines the contours of an industrial European anti-missile coalition on the ground. It will make it possible to continue giving Ukraine the capabilities it needs to defend itself, while authorizing the production of new capabilities under license. Following the American interceptors announced at the NATO summit, France authorized the production under license of French product from Paris earlier this week. Our efforts have indeed made it possible to strengthen Ukraine's air defense through Kiev's acquisition of a first batch of SAMP/T batteries. An acquisition project of an agreement for 16 Rafales was also concluded out of the 100 that had been agreed upon, you remember, in the autumn of 2025, and the first ones will fly in Ukrainian skies by 2028 to 2029. The leverage of European sanctions is essential and all the more formidable when it is activated in full consultation with our partners, notably the G7. We have no doubt that a 21st package of European sanctions will be adopted very quickly by the European Union. We're working on it. And I remind you that on Monday, we also denounced a vast cyber campaign aimed at sabotage, but also espionage, conducted by Russia in about 10 European countries, including France, a campaign affecting some of our infrastructure, such as that of the Ministry of the Armed Forces. As the minister announced, we will summon the Russian ambassador to France tomorrow morning, and we have adopted European sanctions against 9 individuals and 4 entities responsible for malicious cyber attacks linked to the FSB, the Federal Security Service of Russia.
I wanted to know if you had any comments to make on the remarks made by Marco Rubio in an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal regarding the International Criminal Court. I wanted to know what the very, very strong criticism from Marco Rubio inspired on the French side.
Then, your last question, which concerned Marco Rubio and the International Criminal Court. We have seen these statements and the press release from the State Department. This does not change France's position of support for the International Court, its resilience, its fight against impunity, against the most serious crimes. Attacks and threats against staff, against elected officials, against all those who contribute to the work of the International Criminal Court are, of course, unacceptable. The ICC does not actually pose a threat to the sovereignty of states. The ICC exercises its jurisdiction over individuals who are guilty of the most serious crimes around the world. We are not targeting states here, but individuals. And it was one of the great advances of the 20th century, at the end of the 20th century, in which France had taken part at that time.
Three sources have just told Reuters that the Iranians have reportedly asked the Houthi movement in Yemen to stand ready to block the Red Sea oil route if the United States were to strike Iranian electrical infrastructure. What is your reaction to this new threat to the global energy supply?
It is that the escalation must stop, that we return to the framework of the ceasefire signed on June 17th in Versailles. There are now 60 days that have been opened. We are not there. 60 days of negotiations in which the parties must be able to make progress, both on the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, which we have not reached, and on the more general, more global parameters of the negotiations on the Iranian nuclear program, on its ballistic program, and on its proxy program. We must also be clear about the nature of the initial responsibility. About less than a week ago, it was the Iranians who chose to carry out strikes that were against international law, but also against the very text they themselves had signed, and which then led to an escalating cycle of retaliation. So, our wish is that the different parties can return to this negotiation and to this discussion.
Iran has asked Yemen's Houthi movement to prepare to close the Red Sea oil route, according to reports, effectively signaling that Tehran may use its allies there to threaten a key global shipping lane. The move would be triggered if the US strikes Iranian power infrastructure, with Tehran reportedly tying any attack on its electricity grid to a retaliatory effort to disrupt maritime traffic. Iran has already conveyed this message to its Houthi allies, sources say, putting them on alert and linking their future actions to Washington's next steps against Iranian targets. The Houthis have reportedly deployed missiles and drones near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, positioning assets close to the choke point through which much Red Sea oil and cargo traffic must pass. The group is said to be awaiting orders before launching attacks on shipping, meaning vessels could suddenly come under fire if Tehran decides to activate the plan. This reported plan follows Trump's threat to target Iran's power infrastructure, suggesting Tehran is preparing a direct response that trades damage to its grid for disruption of global sea routes. Closure or serious disruption of the Red Sea route would significantly interfere with global energy supplies, experts warn, as tankers and cargo ships rely on that passage to move oil and goods between Asia, the Middle East and Europe.